you know, I don't want to know about those issues.
There we go. All right. We're live. We are live. Hey, everybody.
I'm hard launching my new glasses. If you don't like them, I don't want to know.
I love them, Carmen.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
So Carmen sent me a selfie 2 weeks ago.
It's true. I was in the mall. I had just decided on my glasses. Do you want to say who you thought I looked like?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody here knows 𝐘𝐨𝐮'𝐿𝐽. But I thought she looked like 𝐘𝐨𝐮'𝐿𝐽, and it made, yeah, people are saying it really suits you, Carmen. This is great.
Thanks. Yeah. Appreciated.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to our very fun webinar chat, the Social Club. Thank you for saying where you're coming from. East Coast Canada. We've got NYC. We've got Iowa. Amazing. Yeah, tell us where you're coming from. Denver, UK, really all over the world. So thank you for always tuning in every month. This is such a fun, and Mike McGinnis is here.
Mike McGinnis, Rochester, New York, represent.
Yeah. This is my fave time of the month because really this gets us all together in one space to chat about social. And today we have a really fun conversation happening with the product team at LinkedIn about sports content on LinkedIn, but also just like LinkedIn in general. So it's going to be a good conversation. Carmen's leading that. I'm very excited for it. Also, if you're here for the first time, I want to know if this is your first time tuning into this type of webinar. So be like, hey, I'm new here. And we'll give you a special shout out.
Let us know. Yeah. And we'll be extra, we'll share extra valuable information if there's new people here.
Extra valuable. Yes. First time. Okay, we've got some timers. Jill.
Okay, so exciting.
Taylor's a newbie. We love newbies.
Wait, I think there's another person named Carmen in the audience. Christina.
No way. Oh, that wasn't you saying woohoo?
No, that wasn't me.
Well, welcome another Carmen.
Wow. Okay, that's very exciting.
This is great. Well, I'm so excited you're all here today. I'm going to do a few housekeeping things and then we'll hop right into the conversation because that's why you're all here. I'm Christina. I'm the social and community manager at Slate, and I'm with Carmen, who is the social and content lead at Slate. And if you've never heard about Slate before, you'll get an opportunity to learn more about us a little bit later. But we are a content creation platform for social teams. And the reason we have these conversations is we think, social is a crazy place to work and be, and things are constantly changing. So we like to get together every month to talk about a theme in social. And this month we're talking about LinkedIn, as I mentioned. And yes, if you've registered for this webinar will be recorded and sent to your inboxes tomorrow. And also, if you notice, there is a Q&A box here. So we're going to have a question and answer period at the very end of this chat, about 10 minutes or so. So this is your time to ask questions, whether it's to our team, the LinkedIn team. Ask your questions. And then if you really like the question, you can upvote the question. So if you see a question in there, you're like, I really love this and I hope it gets answered, upvote it. If we don't get to all of them, I'm sure we'll find a way to answer them in other ways, like on LinkedIn posts or through videos. So we'll make sure to keep tab of those questions as well. Another thing is we do have a giveaway. So if you do ask a question in the question chat, feel free to put your first and last name because I can only see your first name. And then if you put your first and last name, I will announce a winner at the very end of the conversation for a chance to win a gift card. Super fun. We always love a little giveaway, and that will happen at the very end of our chat. Otherwise, I'm going to leave and come back a little bit later. If you have any questions for me, if you want to chat, I'm going to be in the chat room. So let's have a good time, folks. Let's go for it. Woo, 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 woo. Okay, see you all later.
Okay, Christina, I think I'm excited for today's conversation. I don't normally have that. I'm not normally that nervous, but today I could feel my nerves a little bit because I'm a LinkedIn stan. So we're talking about the business of sports on LinkedIn. And what I love about this discussion is that the sort of obvious overlapping circles in the Venn diagram, because obviously sports are competitive, but so is work, so is social media, and all of that converges on LinkedIn. So I want to make great use of our time. Let's bring on our guests. We've got Joe and Sam. I want you to introduce yourselves, tell me a little bit about what you do at LinkedIn, and then I've got a sort of icebreaker question for you, which is, what's a stat or a figure that represents the demand for sports content on this platform? So Sam, let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm Sam. I've been at LinkedIn for about a year, and I lead our creator product here. So responsible for building out what it's like to be a creator on LinkedIn, from creation, analytics, insights, our monetary and non-monetary incentives, all that sort of good stuff, as well as what our strategy is for what the future of the LinkedIn feed looks like, and the role that creators play therein. Sports has been a real bright spot for us over the past year. Some of it very organic, and then some of it based on programs that we've run because of those that organic success. I think right now sports posts do 50% better than our benchmark, from like an engagement perspective. And then I think like there's I forget who said this, but it's like when you have data and you have anecdotes, you trust the anecdotes. And so for me, something that's been really exciting is like having people in job interviews or people that I talk to about LinkedIn bring it up unsolicited, where Fernando Mendoza probably was the tip of the spear there, because he just
Yeah,
on his own was really into LinkedIn, which was
yeah,
fortuitous for us. So it started there, but lately a lot of people talking about NBA draft picks, and different sports stories, the World Cup in particular, and those are
totally.
the conversations that I'm having just with friends at this point.
Yeah, totally. I felt like our neck of LinkedIn was just like everything was about the Timothy Chalamet, recent World Cup commercial, and so very like marketing specific.
That makes sense.
Okay, Joe, how about you?
Yep, I'm Joe. I've been at LinkedIn for will be 8 years in mid-July, working under the LinkedIn News team, which is the organization that houses the creative management team. And I have a specific focus on supporting news media brands and athletes in particular. And my support of athletes is I've been in and out with in a role related to athletes for over the years that I've been here so far.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to jump into some questions from our side of things. Eventually, we'll get to some audience questions, but obviously, sports is finding its home on LinkedIn. You mentioned Fernando Mendoza, who I think is just such an endearing little cutie, which I can say because I'm twice his age. There was obviously a lot of Super Bowl and draft content. Now we're seeing a lot of World Cup storylines. LinkedIn, obviously isn't a platform where people are going to learn scores and are like, here to watch highlights. So what does sports content look like on this platform?
Yeah, I think I would like for that to become true one day. Maybe not that you like go to LinkedIn to check the score, but that you're going to LinkedIn every day. And if sports and the business of sports is something that you're interested in, you're probably going to like get this game happened and here are the implications of that game, both in terms of the standings, but also the standings of the players and their marketability and their upcoming contract negotiations and ratings for the next game and how that's going to impact the marketing around that game. So I do think that like we can become more and more fresh over time. It's interesting as we've started to work with more athletes that they tend to have I don't know, this intuition or this habit of going towards what seems like default LinkedIn content to them, which is like, oh, I'm onboarding onto LinkedIn, I'm going to post about leadership. But what we find is that that's not what does best. That's not what the membership of LinkedIn wants to see. And that's not what performs best for those athletes. And instead, it's giving us insight about what it is, what it's like to be an athlete, what it's like to work in the business of sports, both for those that are in that industry and trying to gain that expertise, but also just because it's an area of the economy that a lot of people are curious about because they interact with it as consumers. And so I think where we fit in nicely is maybe not that sort of commoditized sports news, like you said, but getting people a little bit savvier about sports than they would otherwise be, right? I think we're, at some point over the next couple of months, we're all going to be watching the World Cup, and you want to be the person at the party that can talk about the bidding process or talk about the infrastructure that has to be in place, talk about the policies that have had to be changed for transportation, talk about the campaigns that are being built around it, talk about the athletes and their presence on social media or otherwise. And LinkedIn is the platform where you can get those insights that are sort of in addition to sports qua sports.
Totally. Like, I feel like I don't know. I never know whether or not to call myself a sports fan because I really only follow the NFL, but the way that I got into it was sports journalism, you know, and I really liked learning about the players' lives and sort of like, I don't know, their trajectory leading up into getting drafted. And so it's true that I think that there's like all of this sort of like supporting world building evidence that can make us like interested in sports itself, but also that's just like very compelling to tune into on a day-to-day basis. Joe, do you have anything that you want to sort of add there?
Well, I agree with you that there are several entry points for anyone who's interested in sports. There's a lot of people who are sports fans without having to necessarily watch any of the games, because the people at the center of the sports industry, the actual athletes, are compelling themselves. And that's one of the reasons why there is, I think, an increase in not only just interest, but also the use of LinkedIn from that center, those athletes themselves. So to answer your question in terms of like how do people talk about sports on the platform, well, I do think that the example of the World Cup is perfect because it illustrates how often sports is at the intersection of another business. So our news team, for example, have been covering so many stories related to hospitality, so many stories related to marketing, so many stories related to transportation, as Sam was saying. And again, there's so many, it's at the nexus of so many different other businesses and industries that it's not too dissimilar from the way in which other industries are talked about on the platform. That's number one. And then when it gets to the athletes themselves, the athletes are dynamic figures who have so many different interests and so many different other projects that define who they are. And LinkedIn is slowly starting to become, I think, a favorite place for them to talk about what that other thing is, especially if it's, again, off the court or not related to sports entirely. So whether it's a business, whether it's a passion, whether it's philanthropy. And so there are several key examples of athletes who have been storytelling in this regard on the platform. My favorite aspect of the way in which they've been engaging is that there are different examples of key athletes along the spectrum of stardom, along the spectrum of seniority. We have up to Billie Jean King, down to athletes who are in college, down to people who are been in the NBA for a couple of years, like Spencer Jones, who uses the platform to share how he's been developing relationships in the business world. So that's it. I think both the diversity of the topics within that fall under sports and the diversity of topics that the athletes speak about make this really one industry almost like dynamic in ways that others are not.
Yeah. And you like, I mean, the age range there too of the players that or like the athletes that you're mentioning, some obviously retired at this point, I think is really interesting too, because there aren't a lot of platforms where you're going to get like that breadth of, I don't know, I guess just like participants or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so an obvious follow-up question here that I feel like a lot of people might be thinking is, do you have to be a sports org to join in on this discussion? Sam, how do you feel?
Yeah. So just one thought on that comment around like the age range. I think the content that I've found unexpectedly compelling is like, somebody like Kyle Van Noy, who played for the Patriots for a long time. I'm a Patriots fan, showed up unexpectedly. So like there's some novelty to seeing that name, but now it's like, what is it like to be a couple years post-retired and like figuring out what that means for you personally and professionally when you have this identity? And like we sort of hear rumors or anecdotes about retired athletes. Some of them show up in the media, but 99% of them don't. And then likewise for Spencer, who is somebody who did 5 years in college, is playing in the NBA, but is not, an all NBA player. And he's leveraging the platform to form relationships in Silicon Valley. He went to Stanford, he's built relationships with Condoleezza Rice and others. And he is showing sort of like the fullness of what a professional athlete's career can be in a way that other platforms aren't necessarily hospitable to. And then you had a second question that I completely forgot.
I was saying, no, but I love that because it makes me think, I read this article about like Andrew Luck a long time ago, who obviously left the NFL pretty early and then sort of like found all these other new passions. And I'm like, God, we got to get Andrew Luck on LinkedIn because I really want to read his posts. But my other question was, do you have to be a sports org or like
Hmm.
closely related to a sports org to be a participant in this like broader conversation or movement?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and Joe pointed this out, but what's cool about sports is that it intersects with everything else in the economy, right? If you're somebody
Yeah.
who is doing network planning for New Jersey Transit, you wouldn't necessarily say like, I work in the sports industry, but for the
Yeah.
next 3 months, like sports is the predominant thing that you have to care about. And so I think it's about finding ways to authentically participate in that conversation, but also, we just all have opinions, and that's part of what the discourse and conversation is on LinkedIn. And like LinkedIn is a place where you can contribute those. From a platform perspective, we are looking to amplify those voices that are notable, that are credible, that have some insight or expertise to lend to the community in service of broader conversations. And so, we wouldn't be able to have those broader conversations if it were just people in sports participating in them. And that's also why we like an industry like sports, is that people remain invested and curious, and they have opinions sort of regardless of how neat that overlap is. But I actually think like the overlap is probably greater than you think.
Yeah, I think we're mostly talking to a lot of social media teams here, and I feel like people have opinions is like we could just print that on a shirt or some hats, and we could wear that as our slogan. People have opinions. Okay, so why is LinkedIn then the right platform to discuss the business behind sports? I feel like we've touched on this in different ways, but Joe, if you had to sort of sum it up, why is LinkedIn maybe a better platform than another more like, I don't know, say short form video first social media platform?
Yeah, I think the answer is pretty simple. I think all platforms have their strengths, and I think the past 6 months in particular have crystallized exactly what LinkedIn's strength is within this conversation, which is LinkedIn is a place where decision makers are engaging. So for whatever scale can be achieved on any other platform, or whatever type of advantage any one platform has, some platforms are video first for it. LinkedIn's clear advantage is the fact that when people are engaging here, they are engaging within the context of the decisions that they're making in their professional roles. And so that dictates interests and incentives that there are for both the people who are creating, whether they are athletes, whether they're people in the sports industry, because they might want to influence those decisions or make relationships with the people making those decisions, or find it the perfect place to talk about their own decisions and how they came to them and the story behind it and how did this project come together and what do they think of someone else's projects. And the context is the people who are engaged on a platform and how they're doing it and what hat they're wearing while they're engaged on the platform. And that dictates what is appropriate to be sharing, or what's most likely, what feels right to be shared on the platform.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we've established that sports content on LinkedIn is less about like the games themselves and more about, the infrastructure and the scaffolding and everything it takes sort of before and after those games, or before, people are stepping on a court or a field, or, however you want to refer to it. So can you two talk briefly about what formats and what kind of angles LinkedIn might reward? I feel like, Joe, you had some good sort of examples when we chatted before.
Yeah, I have simple rules of thumb when it comes to posting on LinkedIn generally. First off, for as long as I've worked here, I've always thought that if you think about the person who is reading the post, you can't go wrong. So almost making it about them. And some of the ways you make posts about the person that's reading is thinking about what can they learn from it? What insight can they gain? If you are sharing any update, sharing any thought, this goes across the board, actually. I don't think you can go wrong with that approach, because these are the things that prompt people to like a post, comment with it, engage with it, say that it was insightful, add their 2 cents. And those are the types of actions that ultimately help posts end up in the feed of others, including those who don't follow you. Also, LinkedIn is more of a place for posting while thinking about quality instead of quantity. So it's always worth making a point. For example, if we talked about the diversity of the industry and how many people are in it, so I'll talk about, like, let's say sports reporters, for example, and people who are covering the sports industry. I don't think that this is a place to say, hey, here's my latest on the next World Cup host or the next World Cup host being selected. I think this is the place to say, hey, here's what happened and here's why it happened and here are the implications. So thinking deeper, making a point, also thinking about the person who's on the receiving end of the post, and then adding some of the important facts and figures related to what you're talking about to help support the goal of making what you're saying insightful. So these are some of the things that I think about. And as I'm speaking, this is not only things to keep in mind when talking specifically about sports, but like just sharing on LinkedIn, period.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's ultimately helpful because, and I think for a lot of people who are listening right now, like there are probably ways that they're thinking, how can I get in on the sports discussion? But also like, how can I make my LinkedIn content in general good or better or optimized? Sam, do you have anything to add there or?
Yeah, I would say generally speaking, what we're trying to do is we think about like LinkedIn as a marketplace, and we're trying to provide value to the people consuming the content, and we're trying to provide value to the people creating the content. And we have to infer that value based on the actions that you take in the feed, let's say. So do you like that content? Do you save it? Do you send it to somebody else? Do you spend time on the content? Is the amount of time that you spend on the content this about as much as we would infer that you should take, right? So if it's a super long post and you spend 1 second versus a short post and you spend 1 second, we're going to treat those things slightly differently. And so my advice is usually like Joe said, have a point and convey it concisely. And that will usually carry the day. One thing that I'll also note is that we've done a lot of work on the LinkedIn feed algorithm over the last 6 months to a year. I see lots of conspiracies around like this. The fundamental here is just that we've added like an LLM layer so that we're like reading the posts. So we're not just inferring relevance based on who is hitting the button and do they look like you. We're also inferring relevance from this post is about this and you've interacted with posts about that in the past. And so I've gotten a lot of DMs that are like, how come I'm getting this post with 1 like from somebody that I don't know? And that's maybe us overfitting that LLM based recommendation a little bit. So, there's lots of tuning that has to happen, but that's something that I think is worth people keeping in mind, is that we are looking a bit more about the substance of your post. And in that regard, there's some benefit to being specific.
Yeah. I think actually one of my best performing LinkedIn posts of all time was a video I did where I said, breaking news, LinkedIn's new algorithm incorporates LLMs. So people were really interested in that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this one, I feel like we can be pretty brief with it, but I feel like it's sometimes easier or helpful to frame things in the negative. So specifically, what doesn't work on LinkedIn?
Increasingly, what doesn't work is fluff, right? So if we detect the post as being generic, non-specific, not backed by anything, that's something that is unlikely to be rewarded in distribution. And then another thing that does not work is something that does work is having like relevant media, right? So here is a point and here's a graph that supports the point. That works really, really well. Here's a point and here's like a video of a tortoise pushing some lettuce uphill. It does not work. So we are looking for a nexus between the media and the text. And if there's a close relationship there, that is very effective.
Noted. Yeah. No tortoises pushing things up a hill unless you are making a post about tortoises.
Precisely. Which I would welcome, to be clear.
Yeah. I mean, totally. Me too. Okay. So I want to get to the sort of secret sauce. Obviously, you two have a lot of insider intel, and I want you to share some of that. In 2026, what are the essential components of a high-performing piece of content on this platform, sports themed or otherwise? Sam, I'll go with you first, and I know you both have some really good tidbits to share.
Sorry, highlights, sports or otherwise? Is that the question?
So meaning like what are the components that make up a really good post that is going to perform well on LinkedIn? Yeah.
So I would say that like I usually ask people to start with who are you trying to reach? And so and then to judge performance based on that. So I've seen people do this in like hacky ways where they'll look at everybody who interacted with their post and then say, okay, I got 100 interactions, 25 of them were in my ICP, I got 1,000 impressions, so I think 250 of those people are in my ICP, and then that's what I am actually measuring the success of my posts as, and we're going to make it a lot easier for you to do that in the coming months. But I would start there. So some people just want to get advice from their own network. And so you probably want to look at like the in and out of network split of your post distribution and then anchor to that. And then likewise, some people are looking to grow their audience. And so now, you can see followers gained from a post. You can see the specific people who followed you from a given post. And I might anchor more on that. And so you can think of feed distribution on LinkedIn as being three kind of competing metas, where there's the people who are in your network and they probably care about you personally to a greater extent than the people not in your network. And they're going to respond well to life updates and career updates and personality maybe. And then there's a second pool of distribution, which is your network's network. And those are people who likely have some professional similarity to you. And so industry content, maybe that's a little personal, but largely more about trends within your vocation is going to perform well there. And then there's a third bucket, which is just everybody else. And for those people, the content that's going to perform best is topical and substantive about areas of interest to a lot of people, right? So, as to the first, if I'm really looking to reach my network, I might post about like how I'm doing in this role and what my life is like. And if I'm trying to reach sort of my broader industry, I can talk specifically about trends in creators or an event that I went to that a lot of other industry people went to. And then if I'm trying to reach as broad an audience as possible, I might write about like the Fed. Although that might not do well because I do have an economics degree actually, but I don't have like a PhD in economics. So I don't know if people will judge me credible, but pick something that's sort of more trending and broadly applicable. And that gives me the greatest available audience. But I would note that like, unlike other platforms, there's like three different types of people and what they want to see might actually not be the same. So it's important to know who you're trying to reach when you post.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of just a thought off the dome, but when I saw the new metric that shows, basically percentage of your network that saw your post or engaged with it, and then the percentage that isn't in your network, in my mind, I was like, okay, I think this is a signal from LinkedIn that you should have more than one bucket of content. Like one is, like you said, sort of speaking to the people who might know you personally. And then one is more broadly like, if you and I have the same role, here's something that you might find useful. And I like that you're sort of saying, actually, there's a third bucket too, which, you probably have to be thinking of maybe 3 layers or 3 categories or however you want to call it of content, because there's content that keeps people there. And then there's content that people kind of get sucked in by. But yeah, interesting new metric. Joe, how do you feel about like kind of outlining the ingredients of an essential or like the essential ingredients in a really good LinkedIn post right now?
Yeah. Again, as I'm thinking about it, the more I'm thinking that some of what I'm about to say is applicable across industries. But first off, Sam is correct. Like, I don't think anytime I post, I don't know when was the last time I posted without sharing images. Basic point. I just quite personally don't leave them out. I think the highest form of sharing on LinkedIn, period, is storytelling specifically. Yeah. So if you have the bandwidth for it, and if you have the stomach for it, sharing the background of what you're sharing, there's of what you're talking about. Excuse me. Yeah. There's one example. I forgot the name of the executive, but there was someone who was the co-founder of the Sports Bra, which is, I believe, a women's sports only bar founded in Portland. They recently crossed a milestone. And she was sharing the background about like where they've been compared to what people thought about the project at the start of it. That's someone who is engaging in storytelling, and that's a compelling type of post. It's difficult though. That's why I talked about having the stomach for it and having the bandwidth for it. But if you do it, I have realized that it is, I think, the highest form of sharing on the platform. It's just not easy to do. And third, I do believe that especially if you're an individual, there are a couple staple posts that I stand by and believe in a lot. Like, I think that number one, if you're going to a conference or if you're going to a tentpole event, if you're going to any major point on a calendar, you should probably days ahead be posting on LinkedIn about the fact that you're going to be there, because it's a good way of telling people, hey, I'm available to meet, I'm available to have relationships, cultivate relationships. You are talking about something that's probably important within your specific slice of the field. Same goes that like that to me is a staple example or framework of posting on LinkedIn. If you want to be a diligent sports professional who is taking your opportunities to gain audience or connect with people through sharing content on a platform. There are a couple of examples of staple posts that I have in mind, but I don't want to ramble. I'll just say one easy one is that I don't believe ever. I mean, I cringe anytime I see someone get a new role and them announcing it without a photo of them. It's just like a missed opportunity. And there's countless examples I've seen of people's posts that have gone viral because generally people like to support and congratulate on LinkedIn. So there are a couple of, like I said, staples in mind, but I'll pause for now.
Wait, you mean you shouldn't use the sort of LinkedIn generated image when you announce a new role?
Sam, don't tell anyone at the office. I don't know if this is a bad thing that I'm saying. I don't believe that. I think that.
Ooh, okay, let's tease.
I think it's an easy thing to do if someone doesn't feel like going further. Let's put it like that. I recently saw one of my very good friends get a new role, a great role, VP level role at Major League Baseball, and him announce it with one of the generic graphics. I think it's a missed opportunity. I think it's an easy missed opportunity. But this what you're saying right now is how fervently I stand by some of the simple frameworks of sharing on the platform if you're an individual in an industry. So those are like when you're crossing milestones, easy opportunity to thank others. When you are getting a new role, when you are going to a major event, when you are making an appearance on a podcast, a TV show, speaking engagement, when you've released a major project, like these are all opportunities where you can end up talking about yourself, but also talking about the industry, why it's a level of import that it deserves discussing anyway. Again, I do think that there's a starter pack, if you will, of post frameworks that you can stand by. But yeah, absolutely, always sharing images and storytelling was my actual top two bullet points.
I saw you nodding along there, Sam. Did you have something to add?
Yeah, well, first I'll defend the honor of the people that do our new job illustrations. We got GIFs now. They're a little bit more interesting than they used to be. I saw
they have gotten better. They have gotten more sophisticated.
Yeah, but if you care, like if you want people to see it, then yeah, use a photo for sure. And then, yeah, otherwise, I think that's dead on. Like storytelling is something that we see do well. It pulls people in. It has enough time spent per word, which is something that we sort of look like I hinted at before. Yeah, I would say that like I would think of these as like practices, right? Which is like be specific, be substantive, use the amount of text required more than templates, right? Where we often see people will, go to like an LLM and be like, make a LinkedIn post about this. And then what comes out the other side is formatted in a standard way and has, emoji bullets and uses certain words. And that'll backfire. So yeah, I think it's more about what are the things that you can do to make your post as interesting as possible and to get people to dwell on it, and less so if you have like a hook and a CTA, it's going to work per se, because people can react adversely to that.
Totally. I think there's enough content even about that type of content that now I don't want to see the LLM generated post, and I actually don't even want to see the analysis of the LLM generated post either. So
yeah, one of the things that's been fun about working here is that now I can sort of like shit post a little bit, where before I would like get dressed up a little bit more formality, like you feel a little bit nervous about posting. And I found that like, stuff that I write that's like a couple sentences or has typos or whatever, as long as I'm making an interesting point or contributing to something, those actually can do pretty well.
Honestly, like something I really appreciate about LinkedIn's algorithm is that it does reward a good shit post. So keep doing that. Don't mess with that part of the algorithm. I don't know if that's the LLM speaking or if that's the old standby speaking, but I'm a fan.
It's just supply and demand. It's like a lot of people use LinkedIn for education, for information, or for like productive procrastination. And it's like, if I'm scrolling on my second monitor, I want a yuck. That's fine.
Yeah, totally. Productive procrastination. We need more of that. Okay, well, this is all a lot of really good information about, how to think strategically when you're about to approach a post. I think, another point I would say is like, at this point, I actually would prefer and appreciate a poorly written, like a poorly human written post on LinkedIn as opposed to one of those LLM like emoji bulleted posts. So that's more of my own perspective here. I can't say that that will necessarily be rewarded by the algorithms, but we're going to move to some questions. Piro, I feel like I've got some here. You can start to tee me up some as well. There's one that I wanted to make sure we absolutely got to. So I'm going to start with that, and then we'll take some from the audience. But something that I feel a lot of us who work in social media roles and on big or small social media teams is, how do we think about the sort of difference in strategy between the company page and the individual profiles? And I don't necessarily just mean like me, Carmen, I'm thinking about what I'm going to post, but it's like a lot of us manage employee advocacy programs, or we do a little bit of like exec posting, that sort of thing. So let's sort of dive into what it means to build up a company page on LinkedIn, and then what it means to do that for personal accounts.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go for it.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. I would say, as a general matter, people like to hear from people, and content that comes from humans and a human voice performs better than content that comes from logos. That said, when people are seeing something from a person, they're not per se associating it with just the brand, right? You're not necessarily it's not as clean representation of your narrative or messaging as if it comes from a company page. And so there's trade-offs there. And so what I usually advise is like a little bit of like a hub and spokes kind of like strategy, where you need to have people that are carrying your messaging, and they can do so in ways that are idiosyncratic to them and feel native to those people and to their own voice. But they can do that via interactions with the company page, where, the company page is the source of truth for what's actually happening. And then you have lots of people who are amplifying that. And, I think one thing that is potentially a frustration around LinkedIn is that it's network-based, right? So it matters what the size of your network is, and it matters the size of the networks of the people who are interacting with your thing. So that can lead to some variability that feels like maybe frustrating if you're like, oh, this got tons of interaction, but it didn't get as much reach. This one didn't, but it got a lot. Usually that's because of, weirdness around network size in that case. But it's also something that right? It's something that you can take advantage of in the way that you do your planning, which is to say, our plan here is not just for our brand page to post about something, but actually to have a group of people who are carrying that messaging and that are referring back to the page.
Yeah, totally. Okay, Piro, I think that you're going to come on briefly for a quick message from Slate, and then we're going to get to some audience questions.
Okay, going to kick off the panelists just for a brief moment because we have a sponsored message from Nescafé. Just kidding. I tried to do the same bit that Eric did last time, and it's not as funny. Okay, so we're going to talk quickly a little bit about why we host these webinars and who we are, because we love social media teams, we love marketing teams, and we really just support everything that they're doing, and we understand the demand that social teams are facing on a day-to-day basis. So if you know what Slate is, amazing. If you don't, we're going to talk about the social pressures that we face as social media teams today. So volume. You're expected to create more volume than ever before, often without the proper team or resources to support it. So there's that one pressure. The second is brand consistency. Every post needs to feel native to the platform while still looking and feeling like your brand. So there's that element of it. It's like we're trying to be brand consistent, but also be creative. That's a hard one. And third, video. It's winning on every platform. We're seeing video winning on LinkedIn now, but it's also really expensive and time consuming. When I think about creating video myself, I often just like cry a little bit because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to script this. I have to film this. I have to get in front of the camera, and then I have to edit it, which is a long process. And I know it takes a lot of time out of your day. And when you look at the tools available today, they're not really built for social teams. So for example, you have tools like Canva and 𝐘𝐿𝐴, and they're fast and easy, sure, but everything lives in individual accounts. So you're still having to download content, send it to your team for approval, and it's just more of a tedious process. And then on the other side of it, you have like expert tools like Premiere and Figma, which are incredibly powerful and amazing tools, but they come with a steep learning curve. And we all know as social media people that we already have such a steep learning curve with the algorithm and learning about the algorithm changes and what to post and how to make content. So we just don't really have time to get into the heaviness of like a Figma or Premiere, which can be really time consuming. So social teams are often stuck in the middle, and that is kind of where the brainchild was created of Slate, because social media teams shouldn't have to become full-time video editors. We shouldn't have to be motion graphic designers. We shouldn't have to be asset librarians or go into our Slack threads and be like, where did you send that video again? Like, we should have access to everything in one tool. So that's where Slate was created. And it's the content creation platform for social teams. So your brand lives in one place, meaning your colors, your typography, your fonts, everything that you could ever need is located on Slate. Your editing happens in one place. Your collaboration and approvals happening in one place, coming at the end of this month, meaning not only can you create content, but you could also get feedback directly on your content in the platform. Whoa, no more Slack messages, no more back and forths. And yeah, it's really, truly incredible. And we're trusted by 400 brands that use Slate on a day-to-day basis to keep their brand consistent and to keep their brand exciting, and to make sure that there's not like these massive workflows or processes that take up so much time and effort. And we all know we have our graphic designers, we have our brand teams, our brand lives on a PDF. And I, for sure, as a social media manager, I'm not going to go into a 100-page document of my brand guidelines and try to figure that all out. Everything is built into the platform. So this is our vision. We want to build the creative home for social teams. So whether you're creating video content and editing, whether you're creating whether you're creating carousels or videos or images, or want to take a long form webinar like this one and turn it into short social sized bite clips, we have that all in the platform. And like I mentioned, we also have a collaboration feature coming out later this month, which we are going to be announcing all over the Slate page. So who's Slate built for? It's built for in-house brand teams. So if you're working for a big brand or a small brand, it's for sports, media, and entertainment brands, and it's also for agencies. So if you are curious about our product and you want to see it in action specifically for your brand, Carmen posted a little link, but I'm also going to post this link, and you want to know more. And if you click the Let's Chat button and you want to get a demo, make sure in the more section, you say my name or Carmen's name so we get full credit. Okay, cool. So book a demo. We'd love to show you how Slate works for you and your team, because truly it saves so many lives. We save lives. So book a demo. We'd love to chat with you and show you exactly like how it works, what features are in there. It's really cool. Okay, and that is the message from our sponsor. Thank you for listening to me blabber. Let's get back to some more Q&A. All right, I'm going to get Carmen and the team back on.
Okay, well, I've seen a lot of really good questions come in the chat, but Puro, I'm looking at too many windows here. Do you want to queue one up? Because I think there have been some really good ones I don't want to miss. She's working on it. Okay. Do contests and sweepstakes have a place on LinkedIn? No, this isn't the one you wanted? Okay, sorry. I'm seeing.
Sorry about that. I clicked the wrong button.
Okay, you queue me up a different question. Okay, videos are going to perform better during the World Cup? Question mark. Are videos going to perform better during the World Cup? What do we think, Sam and Joe?
Better than they perform now, I guess. Is that the question implicitly?
Yeah, I'm also kind of wondering that. Maybe, okay, if I were to rephrase this question, I would say with something like relevant and timely like the World Cup, do we think that making video content about a topic like that will help our video perform?
Yeah. Yes. So relevant, timely, works well, certainly. And I would say, just as a general video matter, we've seen good growth in video. I would say that the thing that is most emblematic of the value of posting video on LinkedIn is that we see that people accrue followers at 3x the rate if they include video in their content mix. So
Interesting.
generally speaking, when people ask me if they should do video for LinkedIn, I ask, like, do you have the means, right? If you don't want to do video and it would be, completely net new for you and a huge pain in the ass, then like certainly consider that. I don't know what the degree of investment would have to be for you, but if it's something where you
Yeah.
have the ability, the aptitude, you're making stuff already, you're curious about it, that's really the thing that I would key in on, is that video is a good way of reaching new audiences. And then in the case of the World Cup, audiences that are interested in that specifically, if that's desirable to you.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. What metrics are most important for a LinkedIn post? Okay, this is interesting. I would think saves and sends would be the most valuable forms of engagement, but sometimes our least engaged post will get the biggest reach. I know that this one was maybe directed at you, Sam.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's like one action that's most correlated with reach. It is more like we'll show the post to a group of people. If those people react positively, it'll go to more people and more people. The reason why you might see posts with a lower engagement rate get a lot of reach is because of that sort of like topical relevance, right? So you might see a post where like a job update is a good example, where it's like, 20% of everybody who sees the post leaves a comment, but only 1,000 people see the post, versus something that gets a few direct interactions but is relevant to a lot of people because of the topic. And then it's going to be shown to strangers who might be a little bit more hesitant to actually tap a button, right? So there is not as neat of a like, we want to like be like farming because that's going to give us reach. It's much more about like the substance of that post being relevant to a certain audience, either in your network, in your industry, or beyond. But I'll, when we actually like look at the algorithm, it's taking into account, are people saving it? Are people sending it? Are people liking it? Are people commenting on it? Are people reading it? Are people clicking the buttons? Those are all things that we take into account. And then we recommend based on how much the viewer does those things and how much value they seem to get out of each of those things. So there's no neat answer where it's like likes are the biggest factor, because the value function spits out a score that's personalized. That's sort of the nature of it.
Yeah, I think something that, we're reiterating again and again, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, is that it's like you need to be making content that is probably really only relevant to a small group of people who will engage deeply with it. And then you also need to be making content that is perhaps a little bit more broadly relevant to a larger group of people, but maybe you're going a little less deep on it, or it's a bit more surface level in terms of what kinds of insights you are, trying to create or share or something like that. And I feel like, again, even just like the newest metric from LinkedIn, it's like the message is, there's not one type of successful post, and there's not one type of strategy you should have on the platform. Like, you need to be diversifying the types of content, but also the sort of radius of who you're trying to reach. Yeah. Okay. Piero, cue me up for another. She's ready. Okay, the language seems to be shifting to be more authentic. What is the right balance between professional but real sentiments, especially on personal accounts versus business accounts? And I feel like shitposting falls into this too, because I think part of why shitposting works is that it's like very little veneer, and people appreciate even somebody with like quite a professional sort of aura saying, I can also be somebody who speaks to you like a real human.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to this.
You go for it, Joe. Yeah, you take that lead.
Yeah, I do still think that for brand, that there was a mention of personal accounts versus business accounts or pages. I still do think that there's a need for pages to speak with a brand voice in mind. And I do have a boring answer on the side of how much to lean into personality when sharing. And I do think it is dependent on the role you occupy, actually. Okay. And so there is it's It can vary, actually. I don't know if I have a one size fits all recommendation other than what Sam was saying, which is that generally over the years, like people have gotten less stale with the way in which they're sharing on the platform. A little bit more humorous. The scope of the topics that the typical LinkedIn post covers has expanded over time, and I think people have used their judgment within that wider context. I will say definitively, though, on the brand side, I still do think there's still a need for, let's say, restraint there, or being buttoned up on that side in particular.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, there are people on the other side, right? It's like, what would you want to read? Which of these things would you find more engaging? Which of these things would you prefer? And we've definitely seen a trend towards more authentic human type postings. Some people don't feel comfortable doing that. Which I totally understand. Posting on LinkedIn can be intimidating. And if you want to sort of like couch yourself in the norms and semantics of the platform, I'm not going to fault anybody for doing that. But I think just in terms of your content having success, it's going to be by virtue of people wanting to interact with it, and they want to feel like they're talking to a person. And then for brands, right, if you're, Procter and Gamble, you probably have one risk appetite. And if you're, a more gonzo startup, you have another risk appetite. And, being a little bit looser with your brand voice is potentially a way to break through the noise. As it is on other platforms, it is equally on LinkedIn. I saw a post from, I think it was Instacart yesterday, being like, buy fiber because Pride is coming up. It's probably not something that anybody would have posted on LinkedIn.
I saw that as well.
So, which I think is great. I think it's good that people are both humans or being more humans, and that leads to more space for brands to identify themselves in particular ways.
Yeah, and I think there's also like this trust piece that is like, authenticity is great because it's endearing, but it's also like we're ultimately businesses trying to sell things, and when you're trying to sell things, you need to have that trust. Okay, is there a certain kind of video that is performing well on LinkedIn? I have a sense here, but I'm going to let the pros answer this. And I'll give you my 2 cents.
Yeah, I have an answer that's a little bit selfish, Sam, coming from the view of my specific team, because there was a question about like timeliness, for example, and the colleagues on my team, especially the news team specifically, when it comes to in the next month, everything related to World Cup, everything related to draft, everything related to NBA Finals, and the ratings and the growth of the game, the growth of women's sports in particular, like around these topics, the people who are sharing their views via video, like that comes at a premium. Like our team appreciates that, and my team's appreciation matters insofar as they are the ones who are making judgment calls of which posts to amplify. Because for any of you watching, if you don't know already, the topics that the LinkedIn news team decides to cover comes with a specific news experience where relevant posts relevant to that subject are pinned in the news experience. So if someone is sharing video about World Cup, or about the ratings that the first game achieved, or about any trends related to the wider tournament, and expressing that view via video, they have a leg up on getting pinned within that experience versus the next person who's doing the same via text. So on my side, instinctively, the first type of video I'm thinking about are those that are reacting to important industry moments or sports moments, and expressing a certain type of view via video. That's the first thing that came to mind instinctively, though I wouldn't say it's the only example.
One just thing from the technical side is that a higher percentage of people watch LinkedIn video with the sound off than other platforms. And so we see like sports ball, like those sort of like hand-drawn infographics, that stuff does well, where it's like I can get, or making sure that you have captions that are visible and aren't blocked by the viewer UX. Those make a difference in performance as well.
Totally. I was going to say, I think in my opinion, it's less like topic based, and it's more like, have you set up the video in the best way for viewing it? Do you have a proper hook on screen that's written? Do you have your captions visible? I think it's like almost like accessibility features that tend to signal like, okay, yes, I'm going to stick around for the first few seconds and then help your video perform better. There's one question I want to ask you that's from our side rather than the audience, though, and I don't want to miss it. And it's, are there like, what are the athletes that we could be following right now that are doing sports content really well, just to anchor it back into sports for a moment?
Yeah. My MVPs of 2026 so far are Spencer Jones, who's most recently playing for the Denver Nuggets. We mentioned him earlier today. I think the most important creator on the platform to me that I've seen is Sarah Graves, who is going to be entering her 5th year playing for the University of Texas women's basketball team. She's a walk-on. The reason why I say that she's the most important, to me, the most important creator on the platform, athlete creator on the platform, is because what she is sharing is an example of a point that we mentioned earlier, which is storytelling is the great equalizer across different people that are trying to share content on the platform. So on Spencer's side, for example, Spencer has more followers than Russell Westbrook, who has been in the league 10 years longer than he is, at least 10 years, and of a much higher profile. It's because of the storytelling. It's not to say that Russell Westbrook is sharing anything that's bad or bad content, but there again, storytelling is the highest form of sharing on LinkedIn. For Sarah Graves, she's someone who has even much less of a profile because, again, she's a walk-on athlete. How often do we get to hear their stories? But because she is sharing a particular view on LinkedIn, we had a conversation. She was telling me one of her first posts got 400,000 impressions. One of her first posts. And there have been so many people, even people who are professionals, star athletes, who have talked about like, hey, I've had a cold start to engaging on LinkedIn from the start. She didn't. I only have to attribute that success to her leaning into storytelling right away. She does some storytelling and does some custom graphics as well. But that is one of the reasons why I say she's one of the most important creators, because it is an example of how still formats matter, what you're sharing matters, how intently you do so matters. And then beyond that, just some general names worth following. Probably Tim Tebow and Alex Rodriguez are like in terms of star names, are veterans of sharing on LinkedIn. Carmelo Anthony is one name that stands out because of the fact that he is sharing using a newsletter to engage on LinkedIn. And I think that covers like a wide spectrum.
Nice. Any you want to add, Sam?
Fernando's great. I also really like Spencer. Kyle Van Noy, like I said, he's a personal fave of mine. Chris Paul too is a good one. And then there's just so many interesting industry folks as well. Andrew Yaffe, who runs Dude Perfect. I'm forgetting his name, but the founder of the Savannah Bananas is a great follow, and he does videos. And the more you follow, the more we'll recommend to you.
Nice. Amazing. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Christina.
Well, to kind of end us off, I know that I think this is just like a really rapid fire question I want to go through with the two of you. If you had to name 3 best practices for LinkedIn posting, whether you're a brand or personal account, what would those 3 things be?
Yeah, for me, it's make a point, be human, supporting media if you got it. Those are the 3.
Love it. Joe?
3 pointers to remember while sharing on LinkedIn?
Yeah, 3 best practices.
Yes. Again, images, storytelling, the content about the reader.
Love it. That's like perfect quotable things that we're going to use to end this chat. Thank you so much, Sam and Joe, for joining us today. So much insight. I know a lot of you are going to want to go back and listen to this chat and just kind of take in everything that was talked about today. So thank you so much for joining us. If you want to follow Sam and Joe on LinkedIn, obviously, because that's where they're at, Sam's a good follow. I just watched his videos yesterday. He talks all about product, and Joe is as well. So feel free to go follow them, connect with them. They truly share so much insight about the platform. Once again, thank you for being on here. Thank you for your time today, folks. Really enjoyed it. Really just took some notes in the background. And now, as promised, thank you, Joe and Sam. I'm going to get you going over here. Now, as promised, we're going to spin the wheel for anybody who asked a question for the giveaway. And the giveaway winner is Caitlin. There was no last name attached to Caitlin, but Caitlin, find me on LinkedIn, DM me, and we'll get the gift card in your hands. We have another webinar happening next month, Social Club, of course. And next month, we are talking to 3 awesome people about the state of social and what it's like to post on social in the summertime months, and really how to make content for the summer because everyone's out and about. So we'd love to have you there. We will send that link in the email tomorrow. Truly, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carmen, for leading this conversation. Make sure to follow her on LinkedIn as well. And if you want to learn more about Slate, as always, go to slateteams.com. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a good rest of your week. Happy hump day.
Thanks, guys.